بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, so when we left off, we asked everyone to come up with your own aphorism. But we said for tomorrow, but I know some of you are ahead of the curve. So who thought of an aphorism? Nobody? I thought some of you would be aggressive and get ahead of the curve.
Can you repeat yours again, please?
Repeat mine? All right. Within us all, or within all of us, there lies the potential to realize our dreams. However, within only a few of us, there lies the courage to realize our potential. That's an aphorism. So, I want you guys to come up with an aphorism. In English. Say mine in Arabic? I haven't thought about it. Let me think about it. All right, so that's your homework. So the first session tomorrow, we're going to start off by listening to your aphorisms. Okay. Right now, let's take a few questions based on what we went over. Let's backtrack a little. So if we can go back a little, not ahead. That's Ramis right there. Let's backtrack, okay? So we went through these hikam, these aphorisms of Ibn Ata'illah. Among the signs one is overly relying on one's action is a loss of hope. When one slips or experiences a setback. As for your desire to be divested from the world, despite the fact that Allah has facilitated worldly means for you, beware that leaving those worldly means may be the expression of a hidden lust. As for your desire for worldly means, despite the fact that Allah has divested you from the world, beware that leaving that state of divestment may involve a descent from lofty spiritual aspirations. The strength of resolved aspirations will never penetrate or smash the walls of ordainment. Oops, wrong way. Your assiduous striving for that which has been guaranteed for you and your shortcoming and that which has been requested of you is an indication that the inner light has been extinguished in you. Do not allow the delay of time, the time you anticipate being given a gift from Allah, to bring about your despair. He has guaranteed you the answer, but in what He has chosen for you, not in what you have chosen for yourself, and in the time He desires, not the time you desire. And we mentioned here, I forgot to translate this phrase right here, which is a very critical phrase, ma'al ilhahi fi du'a. Despite your fervent and persistence, the fervent and persistent nature of your prayer. Despite that, don't despair. So we discussed those. We tried to situate those in the context of marriage, family, and relationship. Share with you an aphorism, ask for you to come up with your own. So any questions or comments at this point before we move forward? Questions, comments, additions, deletions? Yes, sir.
You mentioned earlier that Shaitan is sworn enemy.
Usually what's inspired by yourself is fleeting, because the negative suggestions that come to the subconscious, these are called warid. So the warid that comes from the nafs is usually fleeting, and that's how you can identify it. Whereas shaitan, he's going to persist. So those urgings to do something unseemly that are persistent, that's usually from shaitan. And the best way to drive away shaitan, the things we mentioned in general, but specifically, is the remembrance of Allah. Make sure every time shaitan comes to you, you're remembering Allah in one fashion. Quran is remembering Allah. You're reciting Quran. Dhikr is remembering Allah. Dhikr in terms of litanies. Subhanallah, alhamdulillah, la ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar. Studying knowledge is dhikr of Allah. Sacred knowledge. You're reading about the prophetic biography. You're studying some aspect of sacred law. Commanding the good, forbidding the wrong. That's the remembrance of Allah. Remembering the various, the best remembrance, because all of these are sunnah, is the dhikr or dua for the time you're in. So you get in your car, Subhanalladhi sakhra lana hada. You come into your house, Bismillah khairul mawlij wa khairul makhrij. You leave your house, Bismillah tawakkaltu ala Allah, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. You're always saying what's appropriate for that particular moment you find yourself in. So Imam Nawawi in Kitab al-Adhkar mentions that this is the best dhikr. This is the best dhikr. Salah is dhikr. Salah is dhikr or remembrance of Allah. So every time if shaitan comes, he knows, nothing's happening here. The servant's remembering Allah. Comes back, remembrance of Allah, he gets frustrated. He wants to waylay you, get you into trouble. And every time he comes, remembering Allah. Because it's the idle heart. It's the idle, the ghafla, the ghafil, the idle one, the heedless one that shaitan attacks. What's the opposite of ghafil is dhakir. The one who remembers Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's the best thing you can do. Any other questions, sisters? Question, comments before we go forward? Yes. Absolutely. Trials do provide the context for growth. So when we overcome them, we're a bigger and better and stronger person. And the Sahaba, الذين قال لهم الناس إن الناس قد جمعوا لكم فاخشوهم فزادهم إيمانا وقالوا حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. So those who said to them, the people are gathering against you, so fear them. And they said, Allah suffices us. It only increased their faith. Why did it increase their faith? هَذَا مَا وَعَدَنَا اللَّهُ وَصَدَقَ الْمُرْسَلُونَ. This is what Allah has promised us. So if Allah has promised us trials, and the trials come, Allah has spoken the truth. My faith is stronger. So trials should be embraced. I like to tell this story. You can read about it. But Abigail Adams, the mother of John Quincy Adams, the wife of John Adams, at the height of the Revolutionary War, she was holding down the farm in Massachusetts. Her husband had gone to France with her son to be the first ambassador to France. During the Revolutionary War, there was a war going on. She wrote a letter to her 12-year-old son, and she said, "These are times in which a genius would wish to live. It's not in the still of life that great character is formed. Had Cicero shown so brilliant an orator, were it not for the tyranny of Verres and Mark Antony." And so she says, you should be glad you're living right now, because this is the crucible that will forge great character. It's times of trial. How will you ever be great just sitting back sipping lemonade? It's overcoming trials, struggling, working, testing yourself, pushing your limits, discovering strength you didn't think you had. That's what makes great people. So don't run away from challenges. Embrace them freely. Okay, we'll have time for questions later. Right now we're going to move on to the third section, and this will really cover the balance of the program, and that is the 7 secrets of a happy marriage. So here are the 7 secrets. This is secret number 1. This is secret number 2. Secret number 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Those are the 7 secrets of a happy marriage. Alhamdulillah, hope you had a good lunch. See you tomorrow. Okay, the first secret, deepening trust. So that was our little symbol of trust there. You see right there? That is trust right there. To deepen trust. So as married people or in any relation, as I said, now this aspect of the program really is relevant for all relationships. So if you're not married, you have friends, that's a relationship. You have parents, that's a relationship. You have children, that's a relationship. But it's specifically targeting the married people, but there's general benefit from everyone. So in terms of trust, being able to trust, as Muslims, we should be extremely trustworthy people. Our Prophet is our greatest example. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. You have a most excellent example in the Messenger of Allah. He's our example. What was one of his names? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Al-Amin, the trustworthy. Al-Amin, the trustworthy. One of the pillars of our religion. Allah Ta'ala mentions in the Quran, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تُؤَدُّوا الْأَمَانَاتِ إِلَى أَهْلِهَا. That Allah commands you, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تُؤَدُّوا الْأَمَانَاتِ إِلَى أَهْلِهَا. That you deliver the trust to its proper possessor. So this is an order from Allah Ta'ala. Any realm, any area, any sphere of life where we've been entrusted with anything, it is incumbent upon us to deliver that trust. That's one of the foundational principles of our religion. Sheikh Abdullah had a book the other day, Ibn Taymiyyah's As-Siyasatu Shar'iyya, political, the Islamic political system. That book is based on this ayah, because that governs the rights of the rulers to deliver the trust to the people they're owed to. And then that's half of the book. The other half, the next verse, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَاتِّعُوا اللَّهَ وَاتِّعُوا الرَّسُولَ وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْكُمْ. And that's the foundation of the rights and responsibilities of the ruled. So the rulers, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تُؤَدُّوا الْأَمَانَاتِ إِلَى أَهْلِهَا فَإِذَا حَكَمْتُمْ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ أَن تَحْكُمُوا بِالْعَدْلِ. And the ruled, so when you rule or govern or judge between a people, do so with justice. And then the governed, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, O you who believe, أَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ, obey Allah, وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولَ, and obey the messenger, وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْكُمْ, and those in authority amongst you. But generally, the first verse, or that section I recited, is applicable to everyone. Because in constantly we have a trust that we have to fulfill. Even if it's speaking truthfully, that's an amana. This, when we gather together, that's an amana. If there are personal things that come up in the course of our discussion, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned al-majalis fil amana. That fil aman, or amana. The gatherings, or kama qal, are governed by trust. If something personal comes up, none of us has a right to go divulge it. Hey, Imam Zaid was talking to this brother, and the brother, he said this and that. Astaghfirullah. No, there's a trust. There's a trust. So what's public and well-known and common knowledge, spread it to the world. What's personal, is we're talking about some things that could lead to some personal revelations. That's a trust. This is a majlis, and it has an amana. So, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تُؤَدُّوا الْأَمَانَاتِ إِلَى أَهْلِهَا. So as Muslims, we should be trustworthy people. Allah Ta'ala mentions in the Quran, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَكُونُوا مَعَ الصَّادِقِينَ. O you who believe, be conscious of Allah. And the consciousness, taqwa, some people say piety, some people say God consciousness, is God consciousness that translates itself into a ready willingness to implement the orders that Allah Ta'ala gives us and to avoid the prohibitions. So it's a consciousness that translates itself into what we say, امتثال الأوامر واجتناب النواهي, to implement the orders and avoid those things that are prohibited. So the point here, what's one of the greatest ways trust is betrayed? By not being truthful. So we're told to be truthful. and to keep ourselves with the truthful, and to be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that consciousness should translate itself into trustworthiness. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned again, as dishonesty is one of the greatest destroyers of trust. A husband or wife find out that one of the party has been lying to the other. Where does the trust go? Out the window. You find out someone you considered your good friend has been lying to you consistently. Do you trust that person the way you did previously? No, you don't. I can't trust this person. I don't know if they're lying or truthful. So, again, إِنَّ الصِّدْقَ يَهْدِي إِلَى الْبِرِّ وَإِنَّ الْبِرَّ يَهْدِي إِلَى الْجَنَّةِ وَإِنَّ الرَّجُلَ لَا يَصْدُقُ حَتَّى يُكْتَبُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ صِدِّيقًا. That truthfulness leads to righteousness. إِنَّ الصِّدْقَ يَهْدِي إِلَى الْبِرِّ. Truthfulness leads to righteousness. وَإِنَّ الْبِرَّ يَهْدِي إِلَى الْجَنَّةِ. And righteousness leads to paradise. And the person وَإِنَّ الرَّجُلَ لَيَصْدُقُ. And the person will continue to speak truthfully حتى يكتب عند الله حتى يكتب عند الله صديقا, until that person is recorded, written with Allah as being truthful. So again, al-ilm bit-ta'allum wal-hilm bit-tahallam. So doing things brings about and impresses that characteristic on our soul. Constantly being truthful. We mentioned earlier that one of the great tests for us as believers is the test of truthfulness. Alif Lam Mim Hasiba an-nas an yutraku an yaqulu amanna wa hum la yuftanun wa laqad fatanna alladhina min qablihim fala ya'lamanna Allahu alladhina sadaqu wa la ya'lamanna al-kadhibin. So to just reiterate the translation of the verse, do people think they'll be left alone merely saying we believe and not be tested? We've tested those who preceded them in order that Allah will show which of them are truthful. وَلَيَعْلَمَنَّ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا. In order that Allah will show which of them are truthful. وَلَيَعْلَمَنَّ الْكَاذِبِينَ. And which of them are liars. So this is one of the foundational tests and trials of this life, of faith. So, as Muslims, we should have no trouble being truthful. The Prophet ﷺ was asked, can a believer, هل يكون المؤمن كذابا؟ قال لا. Can a believer be a liar? He said, he was asked many things before that. He said, nam. He can be this, she can be that. Can a believer be a liar? قال لا. No, a believer can't be a liar. That's one who consciously and consistently lies, not slipping into a lie here and there. That happens to all of us. But consciously and consistently, no. This is not the character of a believer. So again, just to emphasize, because truthfulness and honesty has such a high place in our religion, such a high value in our religion, this should make us very trustworthy people, in that dishonesty is one of the greatest means that leads to the destruction of trust. Again, al-mu'min lil-mu'min kal-bunyan yashuddu ba'duhu ba'da. Why is this relevant? Why did I mention this particular hadith here? Al-mu'min lil-mu'min kal-bunyan yashuddu ba'duhu ba'da. The believers are unto each other like the individual bricks in a wall. Each one strengthens and supports the next. Why do we mention this in the context of trust? Anyone? Yes?
Because unless it's based on a trust relationship between them, there won't be like...
So each brick is relying on the other brick to do its part to hold me up. And again, what is one of the great destroyers of trust? Unreliability. Unreliability. After the first time someone says, yeah, you know, when you go to Boston, I'll water your lawn. You come back, you know what happens in California in the summer. You don't water the lawn for 2 or 3 days. You come back, your lawn is brown. You're like, I said, oh no, my daughter got sick and we had to take her to the hospital. How long did she stay in the hospital? Well, she went to the emergency room for a couple hours. And how did that lead to you not watering my lawn for a week? Well, you don't understand, brother. So the next time you go to Boston to visit your uncle, you might ask that person again, right? Say, well, you know, his daughter got sick, and even though she was in the emergency room for 2 hours, he didn't water my lawn for a week. So you ask him again. You know, I got to go to Boston, and, you know, I'm counting on you. I got my lawn back up. It took me like 6 months. It's nice and green again, but could you water my lawn for me? My sprinklers broke. Irrigation systems broke. Nah, brother, I got your back, Aki. Alhamdulillah. You come back, your lawn looks like this stage. The third time you go to Boston, are you going to ask that particular brother to water your lawn? No, you're not. Some people, yeah, I will. I trust him. Yeah. Look, your lawn was looking like the stage. You are not going to ask that brother a third time. Because you know, in this particular sphere of endeavor, he is unreliable. Whereas al-mu'min lil-mu'min kal-bunyan yashuddu ba'duhu ba'da. The believers are like the bricks in a wall. Each one strengthens and supports the next. For that to be real, we have to have the ability to rely on our brothers and sisters. And so each and every one of us should be striving to be reliable. If someone asks me to do it, it gets done. If it doesn't get done, there's a real valid excuse or reason. And fourthly, al-Muslim akhul Muslim. The Muslim is the brother, the sister of his or her fellow Muslim. La yadhlimuhu. He neither oppresses him, وَلَا يَخَذُّلُهُ, nor does he abandon and forsake him. وَلَا يَكْذِبُهُ, nor does he lie to him. وَلَا يَحْقِرُ, nor does he look down on and despise him. So again, all of these things build trust, especially the latter three. If you know someone isn't going to abandon you and forsake you, لَا يَخَذُّلُهُ, he doesn't abandon or forsake him, you're going to tend to trust that person. لَا يَكْذِبُهُ, if you know someone isn't going to lie to you, then you're going to trust that person. If you know someone doesn't look down on you or despise you, you're going to trust them. Why would that be the case? What relevance does that have? وَلَا يَحْقِرُهُ. What relevance does that have to trust? Anyone? It treats you equally. That's part of it. Any sisters? Anything? What relevance? وَلَا يَحْقِرُ. He doesn't look down on or be mean or despise him or her. What relevance does that have?
It's easier to go back on someone you don't look.
If you look down on someone, I'm watering that dude's lawn. But if it's someone he reverences, looks up to, oh, I better make sure that lawn stays green, or he won't be my friend anymore. And I want to be friends with him. He's a big shot. But yeah, so his grass burns up. Who cares if he ever speaks to me again? Haram. Why is that haram? Ihtiqar. Why is this? Well, all of these are haram. But this one right here, this is the worst one. The proof of that, the Prophet repeats it, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He said, doesn't repeat this, la yadhlimuhu. He doesn't repeat this, la yakhdhuluhu. He doesn't repeat this, la yakdhibuhu. He repeats this, la yahkiruhu bihasb imrin min ash-shar an yahkira aqahu al-muslim. It's sufficient evil if he doesn't do anything else for a person to look down on and despise their fellow Muslim. Why? Because it is a characteristic. We want to have prophetic characteristic. We want to have the characteristic of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is a characteristic of shaitan. He despised and bemeaned, looked down on Adam. ما منعك ألا تسجد إذ أمرتك قال أنا خير منه خلقتني من نار وخلقته من طين. طين man, clay man, Adam. Prostrate to him? I'm better than him. That's a shaitanic characteristic. We're better than those people. Marrying my daughter to one of them? My son part of that family? Subhanallah. We're better than them. Going to that masjid, those people go there. Whoever those people might be. Ana khayrun min. That's the shaitanic mentality. Satanic mentality. Nasallallahu al-afiyah. Allah give us well-being. Okay. Areas where trust is needed. In the context of our relationships, here are some things the experts say we need trust. We need sexual fidelity, which means no affairs, no pornography, other relevant things. You find out that your husband or wife has been having a clandestine affair with somebody. What's that going to do to the trust in that relationship? It's going to plummet. It's going to plummet. Sister, she never gets up at night, except this particular night. She staggers past the computer room and the computer's on. And her husband's sitting there and he's watching some lewd, indecent material. What's that going to do to her? Trust in him. It's going to plummet. So we need fidelity in this area if we're going to maintain trust. Fiscal integrity. Now, I'm going to ask you an honest question. What if you found out after 6, 7, 8 years of marriage that your husband or wife had a bank account they never told you about? So let me ask one of the brothers. How many brothers over here married? Raise your hand. Nidam Ali. You find out your wife has a bank account she never told you about. What's your response going to be? At the very, all right, let's say, he said that it depends on how much money's in the account. Oh man, I asked the wrong guy. All right, she has $8,057.92 in the account.
I have a good opinion of my wife. She's probably saving for Hajj. So,
But she never told you she's saving for Hajj. And you took her last year. Are your antennas at least going to go up? Let's put it that way. I don't want to get Nidam in any trouble. Your antenna's going to start. All right, sister, vice versa. Where's one of our married sisters? Okay, there's a volunteer. Yes, you, sister. You find out, how long you been married? 10 years. Allahu Akbar. Takbir. 10 years today is like 50 years ago. So we're going to give you a plaque, inshallah. You find out, what's your husband's name? What's your name, brother? Mujib. You find out Mujib has a bank account. He never told you about it. You just stumbled onto this bank book and opened it up, and he has $15,000 stashed away. He never told you about it. What would your reaction be? Of course, this will never happen now. I'm not trying to make any trouble. This is a hypothetical situation. What's your reaction going to be? You're going to get a little suspicious. That's an honest response. And you don't blame her, do you, Mujib? Alhamdulillah. So I'm trying to keep you out of trouble there. But no, I mean, my antennas would go up. And this might chisel away at the trust. A gambling habit. You find out, you come home one day, and there's a moving company moving the stuff out of your house. You ask your spouse, what's going on? He or she said, well, you know, last week when I was supposed to be in LA for work, I was really in Las Vegas, Las Wages. How do you say it? Las Vegas. And I lost the house. I gambled the house away. I have this habit. I never told you. That's going to be pretty devastating, huh? All right, let's not be so dramatic. The movers aren't there, but you do find out that your spouse has a gambling habit. Never told you. You think that will chisel away at the trust? A little bit. Sharing painful secrets. For example, affair before marriage. Now, a lot of people, especially in this country, that might happen, but your spouse never told you. Never ever told you. So you've been married several years and then somehow you find out. You think that'll undermine the trust a little? Realistically, I think it would. It's like, you know, people are people, but why didn't you tell me? What's going on here? Still in contact with that person? Sharing in decisions. Serious decisions. Selling things the other partner values. So you come home and your teddy bear is gone. Like, where's my teddy bear? Oh, that thing, I sold it in the yard sale Saturday. You sold my teddy bear? You didn't ask me? In the yard sale? Chisel away. If I can't trust you with my teddy bear, then what can I trust you with? I had that teddy bear since I was 3 years old. So selling things the other partner's value with no discussion, no consultation. So if I can't trust you to inform me, let me know about a big decision like that, what can I trust you with? And these things have to be talked about. A lot of times sometimes we'll feel that distrust and we'll internalize it. We won't talk about it. We have to talk about it. That was my teddy bear. Look, if you're not going to tell me you're going to do something like, what else are you doing that I don't know about? What other kind of decisions are you making that I don't know about? So these things have to be talked about. So these are some of the biggies. This is what the experts say. These are the big things that undermine and chisel away at trust in our relationships. Did they miss anything? Who could think of something else? Well, we mentioned fiscal integrity. What do you mean?
Like if one spouse made a financial decision that makes the whole family in debt because they didn't pay it up in the
Yeah, well, I think that would go in number 4, generally. Sharing in decision. He said financial problem. One spouse made a big financial move and it resulted in a lot of debt, for example. So I think that would go on number 4. You know, why don't you talk about this before you invest it in fly-by-night, get-rich-quick, easy money company? Yes?
May you clarify a point about number 3, the secrets? If you or your spouse converted to Islam, especially at a later point in their life, should they relate all the things they did to them?
Let's ask the panel. Panel, you and your spouse converted to Islam later in life. Should you share your previous relationships with each other? So, sisters of the panel, how many of you think yes? Not many of them. How many brothers think yes? Not many of you. I think you should. Because, one second, because I think those are the things that come back to haunt a relationship. You don't share that information, and in 5, 10 years, I mean, you could do it in general terms. Not specific, play by play, blow by blow, but in generalities. So one, that maybe that spouse thinks you're like squeaky clean and starts finding out this or that. I think it can potentially be a very ruinous situation. Myself, yes. Most of you don't agree. Yes.
I thought like we have some Islamic thinking that if a haram was committed, that it should be hidden as much as possible, so that it's not seen within society as if it's a good thing.
Of course.
Yeah, me and my buddies, we used to go every Saturday night and with people we did whatever, and I mean, so it's not.
But that's general guidance. Where there's specific guidance, for example, we cover up a person's faults. So, you're a father, you have a daughter who's going to marry my son. You come to me and ask me, what about your son? So I say, I'm covering my son's faults. So when there's a specific instance where harm might ensue if things aren't revealed, in that case, I'm obliged to tell you anything that might affect the future of that relationship. So generally that's true, but there's specific instances where there are exceptions to that general truth. Yes, sir.
Is truthfulness integral to all these four, or?
Well, I mean, truthfulness here, being true with Allah and being true to the oath. We mentioned, وَأَخَذْنَ مِنْكُمْ مِثَاقًا غَلِيظًا. They, the women, أَخَذْنَ مِنْكُمْ, have taken you on the basis of a weighty covenant, or taken from you and entered into this relationship on the basis of a weighty covenant. So if we're going to be truthful to that covenant, then we should try to keep these things out of our lives. So that's an aspect of truthfulness. Again, being truthful and open about those things that are potentially dangerous. There's a realm of privacy, and Islam values privacy. So that should be respected. But things that are destructive, or things that could lead to a tremendous amount of distrust, then one has to be very open in discussing those things, especially when they involve something that can be very destructive to that relationship. Painful secrets, again, sometimes the best way to overcome the pain that's involved is by sharing that with someone who's trustworthy. So that's not broadcasting it to the public. That's definitely haram. Even the guy, the guy who's asked about someone in an area, he's going into business with someone. So he asked the third party, should you think I should go into business with this person? How are their business ethics? He answers that question, the one being asked, based on business only. He doesn't say, yeah, he beats his wife. That's because that has nothing to do with his business. He says, I know someone that went into business with him, a'udhu billah, and he ran off with the money. So that's relevant to his business, but he doesn't use his misbah regularly. That's totally irrelevant. So limiting, revealing what's relevant to the context and situation, and then not broadcasting that. So he doesn't turn around and tell everyone. He tells the person he's going into business with, because it has relevance for him. Everyone else doesn't need to know that he ran off with the money, because he's not going into business with them. So we have to look at the context and the situation and then judge based on that. Yes? Yeah.
You had mentioned marriage, and it's on,
So you're agreeing with my position.
definitely.
I agree too. I'm agreeing with your position. Not only that, sometimes the guilt will destroy you. And down the road will manifest in behavior where usually what does a person, in the context of any relationship, not husband, wife, could be friend, who's harboring guilt, what is the usual way they deal with that as it presses on them and presses on them? No, sin, the usual way. I would argue otherwise. Your hands up or you're stretching? Sisters? You usually take it out on the other party. You project your guilt onto that party in a lot of instances, yes.
Well, like, say for instance, like in more traditional cultures, like, let's say...
I know cases in Syria otherwise.
But I mean, you would have to find really, like, really forgiving people that... I mean, just the general thing, a lot of people won't accept that. Culturally, I mean, just as they don't. I mean,
That's true, but it's not...
What would she do in, like, a case like that? Because, I mean, she messed up one time and then, you know, she's okay now.
All right, what happens if her husband and her husband's family finds out 5 years down the road? What happens to her? And which is worse? Her revealing the truth and taking her chances, or they finding out 5 years down the road? What's going to be worse for her in that culture?
Well, also, but then...
You didn't answer.
Well, I mean, I would have to equivocate and say it might be the same because at the beginning then she'd be known, okay, she was a Zanian, and now that becomes known. Because now she's told it to this guy that, yeah, when I talked to Aisha, she said this, and this, and now she's going to have, you know, and now, you know, peripherally.
Well, if they're not honorable people, I would think that they're not going to tell anyone unless they themselves are dishonorable. You know what? You know, I'll marry her anyway. And I know in Syria that at some people at University of Damascus where the girl repented and she became a righteous, pious girl, and she was sought after for marriage, and she got married. But, you know, I would think that honesty in those things are always the best policy. But the social context varies. And it can have grave implications. But I would think that person she told is dishonorable. Because an honorable person would say, look, I'll marry her anyway. Because we all make mistakes. Or, you know what, I think I'll pass. But that's something between us now. That's not something to broadcast. That person who broadcasts something like that, they're in error. They're in error. Yes. Sidi Abdullah.
I think that the reason that so many people didn't raise their hands had a lot to do with the fact that it's sort of a fine line to be drawn. Because I think what's happening is that when people hear reveal these secrets, you know, they're thinking about saying every single thing that's happened in their life before them. And I think that can be a bit problematic in some cases.
Right. Well, I'm not trying to imply that, though. I think just big things.
That's what it was, like the way the question was asked, that it caused a little confusion that way. Because, you know...
How would you word the question? Oh, seriously, this is...
I'll word the question by saying that, do you think that certain information which are critical or potentially harmful to the future of the relationship should be revealed early on, as opposed to saying, should you reveal what happened in your past,
Okay.
past relationship? So I think that's really where the confusion is happening.
Okay.
So for instance, it may happen that, let's say you had a relationship with some people in the past, and maybe your wife is such a jealous person that you don't want to hurt her for her to even think about the fact.
No, yeah, I'm talking about before even getting married.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. I'm saying the same thing.
Oh, the person.
Before
All
even
right.
afterwards, you know. So sometimes people refuse not to say it because they just don't want the hurt, you know. But if it's something that potentially is going to cause hurt anyway, you know, that should be brought out, I think that I would agree that definitely those are things that need to be spoken about early on. You know. So I just think that the way that the question is asked is sort of like the cause of the reason
Yeah.
that so many people didn't raise their hand.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm with you. But I'm talking about here even before one just gets involved. If you're involved, then you have to use a lot of factors. Are you stretching?
No,
Yalla, bismillah. That's an efficient use of movement. You stretch and ask a question.
Well, one of my principles in being a Muslim is to always try to follow the middle way, and I think that both responses are appropriate given the context. I mean, I think if you're dealing with an enlightened Arab family, you should be able to communicate that stuff because if they're enlightened enough and following the principles which will, try to maintain the honor of the family they're getting to know or the one they're getting to know, then it's not going to be a big problem. And vice versa for, for example, two converts, if that's culturally relative, then that should be something that they have to share as well. So I think it's a matter of assessing the situation specifically and not saying this is wrong, this is the way to do it, this is the
Okay, alhamdulillah. I think that's realistic, reasonable. Oh, yeah.
I mean, suppose one, like a boy and a girl does something that's not right, and then they repent to Allah for forgiveness. But maybe if you do say to your spouse, it could really screw things up, in my opinion.
Right.
Then
I don't disagree. That's why I'm thinking of before you become spouses.
right, no, I know. But then what if your spouse starts visualizing what it just kind of, I would say.
But you're not spouses yet.
But it just, some people can.
You're not married yet, though. Well, no, I think that's why I think it goes back to what Sidi Abdullah mentioned, that there is a fine line, and for that reason, people are working and thinking. I'm not saying I have the answer necessarily. I'm just trying to get you to think about these things and how they could potentially affect your relationships. All right, so now let's move to the next area. Now, trust can be lost. We're human. We make mistakes. We slip. And sometimes our slips lead to a loss of trust. So when that happens, how do we go about rebuilding trust? What do we do to rebuild trust once it's lost? First and foremost, we have to repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because if there's no repentance, we're basically saying we're not serious about restoring and rebuilding the trust that has been lost. So the first thing is repenting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the first and foremost, وَإِذَا سَأَلْتَ فَاسْأَلِ اللَّهِ. You want your spouse to believe in you again, you want your friend to trust in you again, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to restore that relationship. Repent to Allah. Secondly, understand that all of the things that destroy, the things, generally speaking, that destroy trust are forbidden in Islam. So the things we mentioned anyway, extramarital affairs, that's forbidden. Gambling, that's forbidden. Pornography, that's forbidden. All of these things that we might fall into, generally speaking, these are forbidden things. So if we're able to understand that, it helps us from going back, as Ansari just mentioned. Once we understand, I'm a Muslim now, or we wake up to the fact, I've always been a Muslim. I was just sleepwalking. Once we're aware, we're no longer heedless, we're no longer ghafil, then we have to understand that those things that are forbidden should be gotten out of our lives. And if we get those things out of our lives, most of the things that destroy, undermine, and eat away at trust will be removed from our life. Thirdly, we have to take personal responsibility. So this religion is a religion of personal responsibility. كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْعُولٌ عَنْ رَاعِيَتِهِ. All of you are stewards, and each of you will be asked concerning his or her wards. Every one of us. And then the hadith goes and enumerates several areas. Al-Amir, Al-Rajulu, Al-Mar'atu, Al-Abdu, the Amir, the man, the woman, the servant, all of them have realms of responsibility. Ibn Hajar Asqalani, just to drive home the point that everyone, kullukum ra'in, that's everybody. We use kul, encompasses the generality. So in any case, he says a person that has no subjects, he's not the emir. A person that's not married, he's not a husband. The person that's not married, she's not a wife. A person who's not a servant, he's not responsible to anyone, then that person is responsible for their limbs. Their limbs are their wards. And he or she will be asked concerning how they use their limbs. Just to reinforce the idea we're all responsible. And as responsible individuals, we have to own up to our mistakes. We have to commit ourselves to overcoming them. We have to take personal responsibility. And in the context of family, responsibility is critical. It's critical. Most of the time when people do those things, they will acknowledge, I was irresponsible. I don't know what I was doing. I was in Atlanta last week for my family reunion. Wonderful gathering. When I'm at these gatherings and things, sometimes I cheat and I watch television. I have to confess. I haven't had a television in my house since 1987. That's when I read 4 arguments for the elimination of television. So I eliminated my television. But I admit, when I'm in these hotel rooms, I cheat sometimes. So I was sitting there cheating, and there was this program where they were setting up these guys to do terrible things with underage girls. Some of you probably saw this show. It's like entrapment. So they have someone make believe they're a 13-year-old girl, and then one guy was a preacher. I mean, they had all kinds of fools on there. And then when they come, they have a camera waiting for them. It's like they drive like 3 hours, and you got to come here. I'm going to be home alone. My parents are going somewhere. And these guys, and then they come in the house, there's a camera waiting, and then they get arrested. And then they interview them. And almost invariably, I didn't know what I was doing. That's not me. But irresponsibility is not the way of the Muslim. We have to take personal responsibility. You knew, and what do the people say? The authorities, the police that are interviewing these creeps and perverts, you knew darn well what you were doing because you drove for an hour and a half to do it. You can't drive an hour and a half, I don't know what I'm doing. Super, you knew darn well what you're doing. And Yawm al-Qiyamah, Allah Ta'ala, that's what He's going to do. You knew what you were doing. Malcolm X, who knows Malcolm X's famous statement in that regard? He said, we're running around here saying, God forgive these people for they know not what they do. He said, as long as they've been doing it, they're experts by now. So we have to have trust. All right, at this point, let's go to the workbook. There's a couple exercises here. Now, what this particular exercise in the realm of trust, if you turn to page 6, basically this indicates what kind of baggage we're carrying. If we grew up in an environment where there was very little trust, as we mentioned before, that's going to affect us because we assimilate values and attitudes over time. So take a couple minutes, go through this little exercise, see what kind of baggage you're carrying on page 6. And here trust is in the context of just relationships and being able to trust others. Now, as you read through this, I want to ask you an additional question. And that question is, which of these issues, so these are really different issues, do you think are most damaging if they occur during childhood? So these are all things you might have experienced as a child. Which of these do you think is most damaging in terms of being able to trust when you develop into an adult? Anybody?
Seeing your parents being distrustful of each other.
So you said, someone said number 7. Someone said number 5. Who said number 5? Number 5. Any other candidates? Yes. Number 10. So 2 and 3. All right, why do you say number 10, number 10?
So I just think that's like the fundamental concept of a relationship. I mean, if you strain that, then you kind of develop a perspective of, it doesn't kind of sync with what you, the reality doesn't sync with perception then.
Okay, so when you grow up, you're never really going to be able to trust your spouse because you saw this violation, breach of trust going on amongst your parents.
Right, because your perception the entire time was there's trust, but then, the reality is it's not, so then you develop a skeptical perspective.
Okay. Let's get one of the 3s to comment. There were some 3s over here. Where's the 3? Raise your hand. A 3. All right, right here's a 3.
Well, I think number 3 trumps number 10. It includes,
Why does number 3 trump number 10? You have to make a case.
because having an affair is inconsistent with acting honestly with each other. So number 3 includes.
Okay, so it's greater than number 10. It includes number 10 and other things. Sister Layla, why did you say number 5? Right.
Number 5, if they're abusive for each other, when they're abusive towards each other, you tend to carry that with you into your relationships, and it also makes you fearful of the parent that was being abusive to the other parent, and makes you skeptical of others throughout your life.
What if they were abusive to you? That's also there. What are the implications of that? Okay, you can talk about that. The question is, which of these issues do you think are most destructive in terms of undermining trust when they occur in a child's life once that child becomes an adult? What number did you say? No, the sister behind. What was your number?
Mine was 5.
5?
I think you think it's normal. Like it's normal to have World War III every 2-3 days in your house, because you grew up like that. So if you get involved with somebody that's just stressing you out constantly, that you think, well, that's just sort of part of life until you're around you learn other kinds of behaviors and you're around other
Right.
kinds of people. But you tend to attract those guys, if you grew up in that, you tend to attract those kinds of people into your social circle, so you don't know any better.
I would agree with number 5 also, because abuse, many times a child that's physically or sexually or psychologically abused doesn't know what's going on, but that pain is internalized, and the source of that pain becomes internalized also. So in the future, an adult, if that pain came from a man, if it came from a woman, whatever source it came from, there's going to be an internalized distrust of that person, because why? People flee away from pain. No one runs to pain unless they're sadistic or masochistic or whatever the word is. Yes, sir.
It wasn't mentioned in here, but I think a big problem with trust is when people have shifted households, whether through foster homes or abuse, and they go from one house to another. Because the parents that take care of them, secondly, it sometimes becomes only they can't trust. And anybody else they can't trust, and when they get relationships, they just find themselves trusting the ones that took care of them as they got older.
Right.
So they have a problem trusting anybody except their foster parents or those who trusted them coming up. And it has effects in relationship because you can't trust anybody other than the ones that gave you care.
Right. And as our homes become more and more dysfunctional, than alternative sources of trust such as the gang. That these people aren't going to hurt me, these are my homies, they got my back, then that becomes the primary source of trust, and every other institution and individual outside of that circle can't be trusted. Definitely, I would agree with that also. All right, let's move on. We'll have time. The last session tomorrow is all question, answers, discussion. So let's move to communication. So again, Muslims should be the most effective communicators on earth. This is a part of our religion. We should be able to speak gently with each other. Sometimes communication breakdowns don't lie in not talking. That's a minority number of cases. Usually, bad communication is involved in talking in the wrong manner. So we should know that there's a way to say things. When Musa alayhi salam and Harun, his brother, went to Fir'aun, they're instructed, فَقُولَا لَهُ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا لَعَلَّهُ يَتَذَكَّرُ أَوْ يَخْشَى. Say to him a gentle word. This is a tyrant. So if Musa, going to this tyrant, Fir'aun, is instructed to speak gently to him, what prevents us from speaking gently to our spouse who we love, who's not a tyrant? What stops us? We should be experts. These are meanings that our religion conveys to us. The very essence of what makes us human. There are several things, but one thing that makes us human is the ability to effectively communicate. What's the proof of that? From the Quran. One thing that makes us essentially human is our ability to effectively communicate. What's the proof from the Quran? Yes. There's one proof. If you yelled and screamed at people, وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ يَنْفَضُّ مِنْ حَوْلَكَ. If you were coarse and crude and hard of heart, they would have run away from you. That's a proof. Another proof. But even more fundamental than that, because that's developed, but in terms of a general characteristic we all share. Naam. Ar-Rahman, allama al-Qur'an, khalaqa al-insana, allamahu al-bayan. So the merciful, he has taught the Qur'an. He's created the human being. Ar-Rahman, he's taught the Qur'an, he's created the human being. He's taught him how to articulate himself. So the ability to clearly articulate what we want to express is a uniquely human characteristic, and Islam is a means of cultivating the humanity in us. The people that believe in evolution, I recommend my second book. What was the first book recommendation? Haven in a Heartless World, Christopher Lash. Second recommendation. No. I recommend that. We didn't get to that part yet. David Berlinski, The Devil's Delusion, Atheism and Its Scientific Pretensions. This is a direct response to Richard Dawkins' The God Delusion. So some Muslims read those books, Christopher Hitchens, God is Not Great, Richard Dawkins, The God Delusion, Sam Harris, The End of Faith. They're the icons of the atheist ideology. Atheism's been made into an ideology. And some Muslims read those books and start shaking. Oh man, is that true? What my professor's telling me? This is a direct response to that. And so what he says is essentially that atheism is far less scientific than religion. Because religion, if you have an answer, that's more scientific than no answer. All right, the scientists tell us that all of this started with the Big Bang. MashaAllah. Now, where did that dense matter that constituted the source of the Big Bang, where did that come from? What do the scientists tell us? They don't know. What does religion tell us? God made it. What's a stronger, more scientific answer? That God made it, because that's an explanation. God made it is an explanation. We don't know is no explanation. And science is a means for us to explain things. But anyway, the point I want to make here, alamahul bayan. One of the fundamental pillars of atheism is the theory of evolution. In reality, the theory of evolution is one of the shakiest, from a scientific standpoint, theories ever conjugated up. Ever. Or conjured up. Not conjugated. That's Arabic intensive. My brain has been conjugated. Conjured up. Why? What does evolution propose? That we came from apes. I didn't come from no monkey. That we came from apes, and that we slowly evolved. Okay, that makes makes a lot of sense. Okay, if we slowly evolved, why is there such a huge, immeasurable difference between our ability to articulate ourselves and that of our nearest primate competitor? A gap so wide that there's no realistic means to measure the difference. How do we evolve from that slowly? And there's such a radical difference. Someone explain that to me. If you explain that to me in a convincing fashion, I'll believe in the theory of evolution. Because God created us just like He created, as long as the fossil record, that's the basis of evolution, right? The fossil record. Here's the fossil record for a chimpanzee, a gorilla, an orangutan, a spider monkey, a rhesus monkey. That's R-H, not R-E-E. That's the cup. And then the human being. As we examine the fossil record, at what point do we discover a common link between the chimpanzee, the gorilla, the orangutan, the spider monkey, the rhesus monkey, and the human being? Yes, sir.
This is very related, but from a linguistic perspective, the theory is that the ability to speak and reason could not have evolved. That you either have a fully developed language or none at all.
Allah Ta'ala said, Alamahul bayan. He taught him to articulate himself. On the other end, what is the evidence right now, today? All these are here. We have chimpanzees are still here. Might not be for long the way deforestation is going on. Gorillas are still here. Orangutans are still here. Spider monkeys are here. Rhesus monkeys are here. And humans are here. What evidence can we find in the recent fossil record that, as the theory posed, we're moving towards a common destiny? What? There is absolutely no evidence. Zero. There's none. Ziffer. Nothing. At all. So, our ability to speak and to articulate in incredible ways, to write poetry. I'm telling you, if you believe in Darwin, you're going to be waiting a long time before there's a monkey Shakespeare. I know evolution's slow, but our ability to write poetry, our ability to articulate ourselves to this degree, our ability to even make constructive nonsense. Seriously, nonsense. Like, who was that? Lewis Carroll, 'twas brillig and the slithy toves did guile and gimble in the wave. All nimble were the borigoves and the mome rafts outgrave. Beware the bandersnatch, my son, the claws that catch the dog, the claws that scratch, the jaws that catch. Beware the jub bird and shun the frumious bandersnatch. Remember that? Elementary school? Remember the bandersnatch? No, the Jabberwocky. That's it, the Jabberwocky. That is structured nonsense. Now, a monkey can make nonsense, but it's not structured. I guarantee you. So anyway, this is a book I highly recommend because Muslims a lot of times don't believe what the Dawkins of the world say, but sometimes find themselves with no ammunition and feel kind of in a weak position just being silenced. So he gives you a lot of ammunition. So that's book recommendation number 2. All right, okay, back to where we were, right here. So, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. So, why would this be relevant in the context of communication? I ask you. Who? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, no one. No one of you truly believes until he, or it could be she, loves for his brother what he loves for himself. I'm sorry. Now let me ask the question. Why would this be relevant in the realm of communication? Any of you want someone yelling at you all the time? Any of you want someone lying to you? Anyone want someone berating and belittling you, talking down to you? No, so don't do it to other people. That's how it's relevant. لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. You wouldn't want someone to do it to you, don't do it to someone else. So that's where the relevance of this comes in. So, effective communication, one of the first things that enhances effective communication is knowing when to talk. A lot of times we don't communicate effectively because our talking is not timely. When talk becomes background noise, does anyone listen to you? I'm a little hoarse. I can't do a good chicken. Man, that sounds like a sick chicken. But when there's just this background noise and clatter and no one lives, yes, dear, right, okay, like reading the newspaper. Knowing how to listen. A lot of times, effective communication does not occur, not due to a lack of talking, effective talking, but the inability to listen. So in addition to knowing when to talk, we have to know when to listen. What are some barriers to effective listening? What are barriers in terms of inappropriate speech? Over talking. What does it mean to talk over someone? Cutting them off, not letting them get in a word edgewise, as they say. Bill O'Reilly's a master of that. So it's like the person, you ask them to explain themselves, you know, why did you do that? Well, actually, yeah, but you shouldn't have done it. Well, yeah, I'm just trying to explain why I did it. I don't care what you're saying. It's wrong. You shouldn't have done it. So we're over talking. They can't express their opinion. So that's a very, very bad habit. And sometimes we engage in it unconsciously. If someone could record some of our tense moments, we could see some of that. And we'll realize that, you know what, I need to just step back and be quiet and let people articulate themselves and say what they're trying to say. So try not to overtalk. Secondly, justifying behavior one is criticized for. So again, that undermines effective communication, because effective communication should include the ability to criticize and say, you were wrong, you lied. That wasn't a lie, because in some circumstances, yeah, but that wasn't one of the circumstances. We're not at war. You could lie. Yeah, I know it's not war, but it's like a war. I mean, it gets tense up in there sometimes. And so, I mean, it wasn't a lie anyway, but you didn't tell the truth. It wasn't that I didn't tell the truth. You didn't hear the truth. I was trying to tell it, but I was telling it through the context of not telling the truth. And so, then what do you do? So you're just trying to give the person some nasiha. It might be your husband, might be your wife, might be a child, it might be your parent. And they just don't want to hear it. Every angle you come from, there's a justification. So what do? Zip. Right? You say, what's the use? What's the use? And so that leads to communication breaking down. And then that problem might become so bad, it spills out of the home. And then other people. And then, why didn't you tell me that, you know, I had this habit of distorting the truth? Or, I tried to tell you, you didn't want to listen, so I just gave up. So this is one reason that communication breaks down. Putting off a hard conversation. Sometimes we have to have that hard conversation. And we put it off and put it off. And the more we put it off, does it become easier or more difficult to talk about it? It becomes harder. You think, I should have just, as soon as this happened, I should have talked about it. And so we're looking for the perfect angle to sneak it in there. Get up. Uppercut. And that opportunity never comes. And so the days turn into weeks. And the weeks turn into months. And the months might turn into years. And we know we have to have this conversation, but we can't do it. And so that leads to a breakdown in effective communication. Being too afraid to clash. Sometimes a clash can be healthy. It can be cathartic. What is something that's cathartic? It can be a catharsis, a cathartic agent. What does that mean? Cleansing, something that cleanses and purifies. So we shouldn't be afraid to clash. If I talk about this, we're going to have an argument. Sometimes you got to have that argument. Keep it clean, keep it within bounds. You referee in this corner, in this corner. All right, let's keep this clean. No hitting in the clinches. The 3 knockdown rule is in effect. You got to just put some parameters. But you have to have that battle. And sometimes being afraid to clash leads to a breakdown in communications. Because I know if I talk about this, we're going to have an argument. He doesn't want to hear this. She doesn't want to hear it. And so we put it off again, when putting it off ultimately is going to lead to far more damage in the relationship than just duking it out once and for all. So we shouldn't be afraid to clash. Ignoring or tuning out one's partner. Again, communication breaks down. Person, they're not listening. They never listen. And so the other partner stops talking. No one likes talking to themselves. No one likes being ignored. No one likes being disrespected. So when that happens, there's a tendency to shut down. So all of these things you have to try to avoid. Yes, sir. 1 second. Let me just run through the litany. Over-talking, justifying behavior one is criticized for, putting off hard conversation, being afraid to clash, ignoring or tuning out one's partners. Yes, sir.
For number one, when I first read that, I thought to myself, not superimposing what you always want to say, which is how you define it, but I actually interpret it as the person's over-talking. Like, they want to talk about everything all the time.
Oh, that's too much talking.
That makes me to five, which sometimes makes me just tune out because I don't have the energy to internalize everything that you want to talk
Well, I mentioned that first. Remember the chicken thing? The chicken, remember the bok, 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 bok. That was the over-talking. I should have put it up there. Put a chicken up there instead. But most definitely, because then it becomes just like it's background noise. And so you get comfortable with it. It's like, yeah, honey, how come you're not talking? I'm getting nervous up in here. Like something, the background, I can't read the paper. Start talking so I can concentrate. So, dealing with tough topics. Again, we mentioned putting off that hard conversation, being afraid to clash. Sometimes there are, justifiably, legitimately, there are hard, tough topics that we have to deal with. So there's insight that we have in terms of dealing with that. Number one, when you're dealing with something that's tough, admit before you hit or quit. What does that mean? Admit your guilt, admit you're wrong. Talk about your role in whatever the problem is before either you become violent, because most violence is rooted in two things, guilt and what's the second? Guilt and insecurity. That's it. Most violence is rooted in guilt or insecurity. Person's harboring guilt and projects those feelings onto another, or a person's insecurity leads them to become violent as a way of exerting themselves to hide their fundamental weakness or insecurity with themselves. So one has to freely acknowledge the blame one might have in a problem before resorting to violence or shutting down. The second, identify, don't vilify. Identify, don't vilify. This is aphorism practice, folks. Thought I forgot. In other words, when you're talking about a tough topic, try to identify the problem and come up with a solution, and don't vilify the other person. No, if you weren't so stupid, we'd have some money. Say, well, I might be stupid, but if you get out of the bed and go to work, we have some money no matter how stupid I am. So we're vilifying. You're stupid, you're lazy, you're shiftless, you're unfocused, you don't know what you want, and you just have a big head. Well, I had a big head. You're so skinny, you could use a Cheerio for a hula hoop. What? So we're just vilifying at that point. We want to identify the problem. What is the problem? What is the problem? Don't vilify, because what happens? When we vilify, communication stops. Either because of the arguing, the tension, or it just breaks down altogether. Identify the problem. Because what are we trying to do? If we're talking about something tough, we're trying to get to the root of the problem and solve it. And vilifying each other isn't going to do the job. There was a song back in the 60s. It might have been the 70s. I lost count. But it goes like this. I mean, some of those songs have meaning. Nowadays, they can't even write songs anymore. That's why they do. They bring an old song and then mess it up. But one that said, there ain't no good guy, there ain't no bad guy, there's only you and me and we just disagree. That's a serious lyric. There ain't no good guy, there ain't no bad guy, there's only you and me and we just disagree. So let's leave off all this vilification and name calling and get to the root of the problem and try to get some harmony established here. So thirdly, watch your words if you want to be heard. So, for example, don't attack, don't issue ultimatums, look for a solution. Never issue ultimatums to someone you're involved in a relationship in. Well, if you don't stop doing that, I'm out of here. You got 2 weeks to straighten out. Don't do that. Because you're going to be put to the test. 2 weeks are going to come and, okay, I thought you were out of here. Start packing. Don't issue ultimatums. Don't attack. Because why? That never helps to solve the problem. We're trying to solve a problem that's a serious problem. What's attacking each other going to do? That's going to make the problem worse. It's not going to solve it. Issuing ultimatums isn't going to solve the problem. So let's put our heads together, forget vilifying each other, forget attacking each other. Let's put our heads together and solve this problem and put our hearts together. Know that change is contagious. Sometimes when there's a problem in a relationship, any relationship, instead of trying to get our way by imposing our view and imposing our solution, sometimes we have to back up and offer something. See, it's not all give. Take what I'm giving. No, make an offer and put the ball in the other court. So we have a situation where there are two parties. Party A is the husband. Party B is the wife. So the husband, he wants his wife to pick up the kids from school. That's all he wants. Because when he picks up the school, he has to take a late lunch break. He has to stay extra an hour later at work because he has to leave work, go get the kids, bring them home, go back to work, and he has to do this at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So all he wants from his wife is that she picks the kids up. So he's been battling her for a year over this. He's tried the subtle hint. They've had the blazing argument. He's tried nagging, and she won't do it. So he changes his strategy. He says to her, instead of saying, pick the kids up, you know, make my life easy. Please, my lunch break, I have to do salat. Now I got to do salat, come get the kids. I don't have time to eat anything. I have to stay later because I'm taking an extra long lunch. So please he just backs up and he says, you know what? I'll read Surah Tabarak with you. And then I'll put the kids in bed every night before I watch the football highlights, my ESPN. Now that's one of the great mysteries. How many times can you watch a guy making a touchdown? It's like, you know, wait, I'll be there in 10 minutes. I gotta watch this touchdown. Isn't that the same touchdown they showed 15 minutes ago? Yeah, it was, but I want to see it again. But he says, before I do all that, we're going to sit down, read some Quran together. Then I will make sure the kids get tucked in. Then I'll go watch my ESPN. So now he's offered her something. So in response to that kind offer, she's taken off guard. She says, then I'll pick the children up. If you're tucking them in at night, I'll pick them up from school so you don't have to leave the shop every day and then go back. So Sometimes we have to change the discourse. See, he didn't say anything about her picking up the kids now. He talked about something totally unrelated. But that sent a message to her. And that message is, I'm willing to give up something for you. And that message led to her saying, you know what, then I can give up something for you. So I'll miss Oprah and go get the kids. So if we communicate effectively, then a lot of these will be on the kitchen table. Because we'll always be replenishing. Yes, sir.
You asked me to.
But you mentioned a very, very important point, and that is, and a lot of these, if we go back and consider some of these things, even before here, this is new. I'm getting used to it. Over talking, all of these things indicate if they're going on, ignoring, tuning out, over talking, too much talking, that one party or the other doesn't convey a sense of importance to what the other's trying to say. And what the Prophet was able to do, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, anyone he talked to, he made them feel important. And one way he did it was to turn his entire body, was to respond to them in a way that made them feel, wow, he's really interested in what I'm saying. So these are really just insights to encourage us to do exactly that. All right, what we're going to do, let me go back. Let me go back to the flowers. There's an exercise here. Actually, there are a couple. There's several on pages 7 and 8 related to communication. So let's work through some of these together. So the first one, page 7, categorize yourself in terms of communication skills as one of the following. Don't raise your hand. The know-it-all. You enjoy showing off in front of others and giving unsolicited advice. So are you a know-it-all? The controller. You're always taking charge in your relationships with others, or you try to control passively through complaining and whining. That's one of the great control techniques, because that manipulates the response and elicits a response from the people you're complaining and whining to. Because if I start complaining, then he or she is going to do this to get me to shut up. So that's control. So control isn't always bludgeoning someone into submission. There are various devices. The pleaser. You specialize in going along to get along. You rarely say what you mean, and you frequently do not mean what you say. The victim. You specialize in relating to others the injustices you are constantly experiencing. Again, to control them by eliciting certain types of response. So my question, why do you think the know-it-all acts the way he or she does? Insecurity? Elaborate on that answer. Did you say insecurity? Then you elaborate on the answer. She's like, yeah, I did. I'm sorry I said it. Yalla, tafadali. And to compensate and try to prove to others, even though they might not need to be convinced. They're willing to accept you as you are, but your insecurity leads you to feel, unless I show them I'm in command, I know everything, they'll look down on me, they'll think less of me. Okay, Jazakallah khair. The controller. Why does the controller behave the way he or she behaves? One of the brothers. What do you think? The controller. Always taking charge or controlling passively through whining. Is it the same reason, insecurity? So they've always had their way. And because they've always had their way, that gave them a sense of control and a feeling of entitlement. And as an adult, they continue to just act out those patterns. Very good. I would tend to agree with that. The pleaser. Why does the pleaser act the way he or she acts? Passive, specializing in going along to get along. Rarely saying what they mean and frequently meaning what they say. Sister, one of the sisters. The pleaser. Okay, so you would agree and affirm the thesis that sometimes confrontation can be healthy. Absolutely. D, the victim. Brothers, why does the victim always act victimized? What's the deeper motivation for that?
For themselves.
Okay, that seems to be the consequence. What do you think is the deeper motivation? So the consequence of your pushing this victimization is that you're going to let him follow up. You're going to delegitimize that person. But what do you think the deeper motivation that's pushing that person to that position?
The need to be loved.
Okay, that's a deep one. The need to be loved. Here's some brothers that, like, I know. Yes.
It's like a manifestation of the know-it-all. Also, they want to have sympathy thrusted upon them so that they're it's a way to make them feel good.
I think that would be very close to what C.D. Dawood mentioned, a need to be loved. I need to be loved. My importance needs to be affirmed. Next to you. Okay, this gentleman right there.
Deflecting responsibility.
Say that again.
Deflecting responsibility away from yourself.
Deflecting
to accept responsibility for the conflict.
And that's, in the long run, is not healthy at all. All right, 4.2, go through that very quick yourself and just think about, again, if this was the situation in your childhood, how would that affect the way that you communicate? So go through, read through, and then think about these things. Let me ask you a question. How many of you know someone that you would consider an ogre? And not a Shrek-like ogre, but a real old school ogre. How many of you know an ogre? I mean, that dude's an ogre. That's it. You know an ogre?
Yeah.
Why would you consider that person an ogre?
Because the way they try to make you feel.
So they dump on you.
Yeah.
They down talk to you.
Yeah.
They belittle you. And your sisters know an ogre. You know an ogre. Unfortunately, why would you consider that person an ogre?
Because he doesn't respect his family or his wife and, doesn't listen to them. He feels like he needs to exert his control over them to probably be more like a man. But in the process, he's lost, his family.
Subhanallah. Subhanallah. Second question. Now this, honestly answer. No details. No details. How many of you, number 4, feel that your style of communication resembles that of one of your parents? Raise your hands high. A fair number.
And you use knowledge.
Was your father your hero?
Definitely.
Alhamdulillah. A lot of people can't say that. And that's how it should be. People, your father should be, mother should be the hero. Father should be the hero, one of the parents. Uncle, somebody close. Now our heroes are people who aren't heroic. My hero is this athlete. That guy could be a profligate. He has a nice smile in front of the camera. He's paid to smile nice like that. The nicer he smiles, the more money and sneaker contracts he gets. You know, how many non-personable, non-charismatic athletes get sneaker contracts? You're not going to sell sneakers. You might nowadays. Man, you see that dude, man, he's hard. I'm getting some of them. Someone with a personality, charisma, but a lot of time that's just for the camera, for the money. This is a true story. I was in Philadelphia about, I guess, 4 or 5 years ago when they had the ICNA convention in Philadelphia, 4 or 5, 6 years ago. And I was coming back from the convention center to the hotel, and I was with a couple young kids, and one of them said to the other, he said, man, I just saw Busta Rhymes, the rapper, Busta Rhymes, and he said, yeah, he looked like he wanted to kill me. So, I mean, he probably thought Busta Rhymes, this cool rap guy, man. Yo, if I meet him one day, yo, what's up, my man? He said, Busta looked like he wanted to kill me. He was like shaking up. And, you know, that's all persona. So he knows Busta Rhymes from some mediated reality face-to-face with him. He wasn't a very likable guy at all. But those become our heroes, as opposed to people who are close to us or should be close to us. People who are impacting our lives or should be impacting our lives, those should be our heroes. And so we should be trying to act in a fashion where those coming behind us will look up to us as heroes and not be afraid of that. So we're not trying to aggrandize ourselves, but we should have enough credibility and responsibility to realize people are looking at us. And sometimes we forget it. People are looking at us. And sisters, you don't know who is looking up to you. So you have to always be on point. Because just as the positive things are imitated, the negative things are imitated also. And so we should try to be on point. And I take the responsibility. I'm going to try to be a positive role model and a positive influence for others. So that's why I mentioned that. All right, finally, depression. Now, a lot of times, depression undermines communications. And this is very real. And there's more depression nowadays because there are more things to depress people. People, generally speaking, feel that there are forces out there too big, beyond my control. I can't even control my food. I can't buy rice. You try to buy rice lately? It can be challenging. And so people feel, in the old days you had gardens. There's is Sister Sakina here from Australia? Not here? She is here. Later on, maybe tomorrow if you're here, we'll have you explain about some of the ecological and food sustainability work that you're involved with. You willing to do that? The point is, we grew our own food. We had a garden. We had chickens. And so with no chickens, no garden, we lose control. And then so that the pressure and the stress of knowing, will I be able to eat next week? Will bombs be raining on my head? Will some of these negative forces afoot in the world affect me in a disadvantageous or harmful way? There are a lot of forces that are working at our subconscious, at our psyches, that generate depression. So there's a lot more depression. Wallahu alam, Allah knows much. That has to be scientifically proven, but in an anecdotal way, I think we can safely say that. What are some major signs of depression? When you see some of these things, marked changes in sleeping and eating patterns, withdrawal from family and friends, lack of interest in activities that were once very pleasurable, general irritability, difficulty concentrating or making decisions, inability to find pleasure in any aspect of life, talk or thoughts of despairing or of a despairing or suicidal nature. This can often lead to destructive behavior. If you see these things in a person that's close to you, not only will these things in many instances, alone or in combination, undermine effective communication, but these things sometimes are an indication of depression. You should try to, if you see these things, try to get a person directed to help. We mentioned some contacts below. This is at the national level. They can direct you to local people or institutions that can help you. So National Institute of Mental Health, American Psychiatric Association, American Psychological Association, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, because depression is a mental illness. And if someone's sick, one should not see that as a source of shame. It's a disease, and it's a treatable disease. But when you start to identify it in someone, try to get that person help, especially if it's someone close to you, because it will affect communications and it can lead to deeper problems. So that's what we're going to cover today. Tomorrow, 10 o'clock, we're going to carry on. We're going to finish these 7 secrets of a happy marriage. And as you can see, I think you can see, a lot of this is relevant in all of our relationships, not just in the context of marriage. The final session is devoted exclusively to discussion. There's a tremendous exercise tomorrow that some of you are going to see for the first time in your life, and I'm guarantee you're going to enjoy that. So we're going to stop right here. Any questions that you weren't able to ask, write them down tomorrow in the context of the give and take. Hopefully it'll be addressed. If not, the final session is just for questions. And what's it all about? This is what it's all about. This is the outcome we're trying to achieve. So let's go for it. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Narakum gadan sabahan insha'Allah ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Fadl.